Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Cathy Fyock, the Business Book Strategist. Cathy leads her own consulting and coaching and speaking practice. She's been a member of the National Speakers Association for more than 30 years, and she's a certified speaking professional. She started a coaching business in 2014. She's helped nearly, or maybe it's over 200 professionals become published authors, including me. So Cathy coached me through the writing and publication of my most recent book, Measures of Success. And Cathy has again been coaching me on the book I'm trying to get finished up here, The Mistakes That Make Us. So before I tell you all about Cathy's own books, Cathy, thank you for being here. How are you?
Great to be here. Thanks so much, Mark.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story, and there's a lot we can talk about here today. But I will tell everyone first, and correct me if we might be missing something. You've written so many books here. On Your Mark, From First Word to First Draft in 6 weeks, blog to book, repurposing content to discover the book you've already written, the speaker author, sell more books and book more speeches, and the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon bestseller Authority. Anything? I feel like there's the one that you co-wrote with Everett. Remind me of the title of that one.
Right. My new book, which is a workbook for authors who are wanting to kind of pull together all their thoughts and the strategic direction for their book. So that's the newest book, my new book.
So I'll put links in the show notes to Cathy's website. You can find her, of course, on Amazon, find her books there. So, Cathy, as we always do here, I'm curious to hear what your story is going to be. What would you say is your favorite mistake?
Well, it's interesting how this is a cause for great contemplation and introspection. Mm-hmm. But as I'm thinking back, it was at a time when I was working in my own business, and things were sort of falling apart in my personal life. My mom passed away. She had worked with me in the business, and things just weren't as easy or coming to me as easily as they were before. And I thought that I needed to leave my own business and be a part of a team. Mm. And that really has been my biggest mistake. Although, as I'm thinking back on it, I'm not sure that there's any way I could have learned the lesson other than having gone through it. Because what happened was I did join a team, and it was, as many teams are, very dysfunctional. And what I found was that while, yes, I do love working with other people, I love collaborating with others, what I found was that it didn't allow me the opportunity to set my own vision, set my own course, make my decisions, make my own mistakes. Actually, yeah. I felt like I was being held back by the vision or the thinking of someone else, which is fine when you join an organization. You can't be the one in charge all the time. But I guess after so many years of being an entrepreneur, making my decisions, really loving the aspects of making my decisions, going into a team environment was really wrong. So I had to make the mistake, though, several more times. I went from that organization to another organization that was equally but differently dysfunctional. And then another team. And then finally, I had the wherewithal to say, I need to get back to my own company, call my own shots, do it my way. And I've learned that I really am unemployable.
Yeah. What was that? Well, thank you for sharing all that. And I think there's a little more we can, unpack from all of that. Was your previous business similar to what you're doing now, or was it different?
It was. I was a human resources consultant. I did speaking and training primarily, more than consulting. Mm-hmm. I was on faculty with the Society for Human Resource Management. It was a great business. I'd written books as a strategy to differentiate myself and grow myself in the marketplace. So in many ways, I was very, very successful. I was just starting to feel very lonely. And I think that was really precipitated more by the death of my mom, who had been my work partner, than anything. In fact, we even authored a book together. So that's how close we were.
Yeah, gosh. Was it like when you were in that first organization, how long did you stay? Was it difficult to admit the mistake?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Or tell us
Because I
more.
didn't really even admit it at first. I just thought I'd picked the wrong team.
Mhm.
But
Mm.
uh,
So the
I
question
found that there
was, yeah,
was,
wrong team or being on any team
right,
what
right.
was the mistake?
Yeah, so I thought at first it was just being on the wrong team. I found that not everyone had the same work ethic that I did.
Mhm.
I like to work hard and be rewarded for that hard work and then play hard. So I don't mind working hard, but I also I don't mind people having a good time, but let's get our work done and let's move forward with the order of the business and get that work done.
Mhm. So how long was it before you left that first company
Oh,
to try
it was
again?
4 years. I gave it a
Oh,
good
okay.
4 years, and really finally they asked me to leave.
Mhm.
Um, and he had asked me, it was a company that was doing primarily financial consulting, and I was their recruiter, and I also managed their human capital projects. And I was actually one of the best salespeople in the whole country for human capital projects. But my boss came to me and said, we're really not a human capital company. We are a financial company. We want to stay in our lane and we want to do that. So you can continue with this company, but you will need to, if you get any human capital work, you will not get credit for it. You will not be encouraged to do any of the human capital things that you have been doing in the past. And my whole career up to that point had been in building my reputation, building a thought leadership within the human capital community. And at first my reaction when he came to me was like, oh, I can do it, because I know I can do it.
Mhm.
But did I want to do it? And was it worth it for me to do it? And was I offering my best self to the organization if I was going to be in this space that I'm not qualified for? I have no interest or passion for. So after much contemplation, I said, no, I'm gonna go in another direction.
Yeah.
And so I left the organization and joined another human capital organization, and then another human capital organization. I was at the second organization for about a year and a half, and the third one for a year. And then I finally found my direction, my calling to
Yeah.
go forward as a book coach.
Yeah. So you touch on so many interesting points here and challenges a lot of us face of recognizing a problem. Have we a mistake? Have we framed it properly? Being stuck in that situation of feels like a mistake, but I feel like I can make it better. I want to see it through versus cutting bait
Yes.
and moving on. I mean, after the first time, you talked about how it was 4 years, a year and a half, 1 year. Did it become easier to come to the realization of, okay, gosh, I need to move on? Or tell
Yes,
us
it
more about
did. Because I was thinking at first, I was thinking, I just had found the wrong team. And after the first experience, I'm not sure that hypothesis was untrue or true. So I thought I just need to be on a different team. So I was on a different team. Um, with no better results. And then the third team, and I'm like, okay, Cathy, let's learn from this. And perhaps you don't need to be on a team. Perhaps you are a solopreneur who just needs collaboration and to find lots of opportunities for community and for connection with others.
Yeah.
And that's really where I ended up.
Yeah. So then I'd love to hear a little bit more of the story then of you mentioned having that spark of saying, you're going to form the business that you're doing now, working with authors. Tell us a little bit more of the origin story of the current business.
Okay, I stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Basically, I was working for this company. I was not happy. I didn't know what to do next. I was working as an HR consultant and thinking, I'm not even sure I want to be an HR consultant anymore. I'm just not sure that that's the right space for me. And I got a call out of the blue, as sometimes these things happen, from my chapter of the National Speakers Association. Then the president of the local chapter said, Cathy, I heard a rumor that you wrote one of your books in less than 6 weeks. And I said, well, actually, I wrote 4 of my 5 books at the time in less than 6 weeks. And he said, that is amazing. Yeah. Do you have a process? And I thought about it. I thought that was a really great question. I thought, yeah, I guess I do have a process. He said, would you be willing to give a program for a chapter about your process? And I said, yes, absolutely. He said, but before you say yes, he said, we have a couple of our chapter members who are working on their books. Would you be willing to coach them using your process and then give your presentation to the chapter? And I said, oh, you had me at give a presentation.
As a speaker.
So I started, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I started coaching these 2 women who were friends of mine. And pretty quickly they said, have you ever thought about being a book coach?
Yeah.
And my response was, I don't even know. Is that a thing? Is there a need? And they said, oh, yes. And so fast forward to my presentation to the chapter, my friends, of course, I've been a member for more than 30 years. My friends came up to me and said, Cathy, have you ever thought about being a book coach? Yeah. And I thought, okay, this is the sign. This is what I need to be doing next. So that was in the spring of 2013. And by January 2014, I launched my new business. Yeah. And of course, what I needed to do in order to position and pivot, because I really didn't have any credentials as a book coach, except that I had authored books, except that I now needed to author a book about how to write books.
Right.
And that was my credential. And that's what I tell people about the power of a book.
Yeah, for sure. And as you were thinking about this business and you brand yourself business book coach, like you were writing business books, so was that kind of a natural fit, or I'm
yes.
Curious, like, was it? Did you worry it was a mistake to narrow the focus, or a mistake not to?
Well, in fact, my husband really tried to talk me out of it. He said, why don't you just help people start businesses, start businesses as consultants. Yeah. I said, or as coaches or whatever, or speakers. And I said, I don't think that's specific enough. I think that being niched is the way to go. So against his advice, I just thought this just feels right. This feels like the right niche. It feels like the right area. It feels like the right use of my expertise. It's also where my passion is. I'm really, really passionate about the power of books. I really believe that they are magical in what they can do for your career. And I've seen that now, not just once, but at least twice with this my initial career direction, and now this huge pivot into book coaching. Yeah. And it's the power of a book.
Well, it's proved powerful for you. I can certainly speak to how that has been powerful going back to the first book I wrote, 2008. So going back 15 years ago, that certainly opened a lot of doors. And maybe, in the second part of the conversation here, I think maybe there's 3 categories that we can talk about of like sort of This is something you do really well, is thinking about the business model around a book, the concept of a book in your business,
Yes.
writing and then publishing. So maybe we can talk about that first part. And when we talk about following a passion, that's been, I think, one of the drivers for me when an idea finally hits a point where I want to write again. I figure I'll write again, but I don't know. And then something hits and something builds and becomes a passion. My favorite mistake, this podcast has been a passion, and the book is an extension of that. I'm sure the answer might be it depends, but I'll ask the question anyway. Can it be a mistake where do we find the balance between following a passion of what you want to write about versus kind of trying to understand a market for a book or the business model around a book?
I think it's the intersection of those two things. I think your passion will take you where you have interest and where you have just a curiosity and a desire.
Mhm.
And I think anytime you start a business or write a book, it's a big project. It's a big deal. And it will take a lot of energy, resources, time. So you better be really excited about it and passionate about it. So I think that, but you can't do it if I'm just super excited about something that no one in the rest of the world is interested in, then so what? So there has to be that intersection of finding the sweet spot of those two. But oftentimes what I do is talk with authors about the importance of seeing sort of where the market is going, sort of anticipating. And I think if you've been in business for a little while, you have a sense of that. You have a sense of what is becoming hot and what is becoming trending. What issues are trending? What is the excitement going forward? And then thinking about ways to align your passion with that direction.
And that business model around a book, I'm thinking, you talked about your husband's question of should you help people start businesses? A book is like a startup. In a lot of ways. You're creating something new. It's probably innovative. So I guess the dilemma of, can you rely on focus groups or feedback, or how much do you follow your gut? To your point, Cathy, if you think you have a sense of where things are headed, sometimes you have to get out in front of others. That might be true with a book sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, I saw it with my first book. My first book was written back in 1989. It was published in 90, and it was on the aging of the workforce. And I was way ahead of my time. It was certainly an issue then, and employers were dealing with the issues of an aging workforce and older workers and so forth. But I was far ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
But what has been interesting about that, even though I have been ahead of the curve there, writing the book about that topic has served me even all these years later. While almost all of my work is around book coaching, I did take on a project several years ago with someone who needed a generational expert on a topic. And I've been able to realize many dollars in revenue from that project that was from this book that I had established my thought leadership around, all these years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the power of a book. It doesn't mean that you're only a thought leader for a short period of time. If you've written a book, a significant book on an important issue, you'll always own that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there's the credibility that comes from that. And one thing that I've discovered in the process of writing is if you feel like you know enough about a topic to write a book, the best way to learn, you end up learning so much more about that topic, I think, hopefully, as you're writing, right?
Yes. In fact, I'm working on some things right now on the transformational power of authorship. And actually, it's interesting. It's the intersection of AI and
Hmm.
where AI comes into, because you can have your book written by AI now. So what is what does writing do for the author? What does writing something do for my readers? What does me writing something do for my readers?
Hmm.
And I do think that there is something that happens when you are collating the information, you're curating all of this knowledge, you're putting it all together, coupling it with your own experience, telling your stories, then it it creates something that's completely different.
Hmm.
And you own your thought leadership like you've never done before.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's kind of where I am right now. That's a kind of a trending issue
Hmm.
that is really it's intriguing, the
Yeah,
nature of this question.
yeah, yeah, it is. You mentioned AI. I mean, I've played around with Open GPT. You can tell it's a technology person, not a marketer who is with that name. But kind of asking it to outline a blog post or even to write a blog post. And there's that, kind of whenever I've used any of that content, I've been pretty transparent in terms of like, hey, I've been playing with this AI tool and with some back and forth, here's what we ended up with and trying to be transparent about that.
Mhm.
What I guess, I mean, ethical dilemma around how much you disclose use of that, or is it just a different form of a ghostwriter and a question around if somebody uses a ghostwriter, do they need to disclose that? I mean, what are your thoughts on navigating either of that, whether it's human assistance that might go as far as quote unquote ghostwriting or AI?
Well, it's interesting. When it comes to ghostwriting, I do not do ghostwriting. I do not encourage my authors. In fact, I really discourage them
Uh-huh.
because they're losing out on, like I say, this transformational
Uh-huh.
power of authorship. There's something about collating, curating, uh, diving through the information, coupling it with your own experiences, and coming up with these ideas that is indeed transformational. So you're missing that if you're using a ghostwriter. You're
Yeah.
missing that if you're relying exclusively on AI. So I, I, I believe that if we're really going to be true to our craft
Mhm.
as thought leaders, then we need to use it. I think AI can be a powerful tool when used to just explore. Did I get everything that I wanted to in
Mhm.
that discussion of those topics? Did I cover everything? In fact, I wrote an article last night. I went to AI, to Chat GPT, and I put in my question about how authors can use AI,
Mhm.
and it came up with a little article, a little post. And so I took it and edited it and add my own stories, add my own personality.
Mhm.
And what I'm planning to do is some kind of learning event, maybe where I take authors through that experience of coming up with the raw data, editing, adding your own layer of experience, changing the things you don't agree with or that you
Mhm.
don't like or that you don't want to focus on, and coming up. And I think that's probably the ethical way to deal
Yeah,
with AI.
yeah. I mean, I'd be curious if somebody ever lists Chat GPT as a co-author. Just to say, all right, look, I'm going to disclose it. But I mean, I think there's one other interesting use. I don't know if you've tried this, where, and there's limits to how much text you can copy paste, but you can take text, paste it in, and say, ask it, summarize this for me. That might be a way of kind of checking for. I mean, it's an AI reader, and I mean, I would still, I'm still asking human readers to read and give feedback, and but as a way of checking, like, I think this main point I hope is clear, but it's always in the eye of the reader. or the brain
Absolutely.
of the computer reader.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to hear more from you over time, Cathy, as you're
Yeah, it
exploring
will. It will.
and helping others. So I want to talk more about, the writing process. And again, like I mentioned up front, you've been a helpful coach for me. It's taken me longer than 6 weeks to write my books, and that's not your fault. I'm not.
No, the world today is so crazy, and we're all so crazy busy that nobody really writes their book in 6 weeks anymore.
Yeah,
but it can happen if you're truly focused and deliberate and intentional.
Yeah, and part of my challenge has been juggling book time with other responsibilities and the schedule.
Absolutely.
And one way you've helped me, and I try to turn this into a question. I mean, talk about how you've helped others. Like you've been helpful to me in terms of not just recommending that I block time, but that I block time with a specific purpose, and to try to bite off a smaller bite of this big task called write the book, and to break it down into smaller tasks. So I think that was helpful.
It really doesn't help to put write book on your calendar or on your to-do list or anything else. It's just too big. It's too unwieldy, and we need to have specific tasks and specific time frames. So the more specific we can get on those, the better we will be.
Yeah. And then, I think there's also the trap of, thinking about the book as opposed to putting fingers on keyboard. How do you help coach people through that?
Yeah. Oh, I've got it all right here. It's right here. But yeah, it takes a lot to get it from your head to the page. And the hard work is to sit down and actually crank it out. For most of my authors too, I find that they overthink the book. They're trying too hard to write perfect sentences, perfectly crafted posts, perfect gems of writing, and it just doesn't happen that way. You need to throw up on the page to get it all out, and then go back through it and edit it, and that's a completely separate function from the writing of the book.
Mm-hmm. And so there's the writing, and maybe let me ask this as a question. I mean, like I found it can be a very iterative process. You outline what you think the book is going to be, and then you're writing, and then you realize, well, you can always rearrange. And I mean, do you see anyone fall into a trap of being like a little too stubbornly stuck to, well, this was my plan, I need to execute it? Like how do you help someone navigate through that challenge of,
right,
do I change or do I keep moving forward? It's kind of like back to your jobs question.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Usually if someone's brain is saying this is not working, they will get stuck. And that's usually a reason for being stuck, is that it's just sort of not working. It's not flowing. It's not producing results. So that's when I usually know when someone is stuck and they say, oh, we need to skip a meeting. No, I said, that's when we need to meet most of all, and to talk through what's really going on. Have you not defined your thesis correctly? Have you not defined your targeted reader? Is the structure for discussing your topic, is it not laid out properly? So let's figure out what's getting in the way of you moving forward. Mm-hmm. Because if you had a clear vision and if it was all working, you would have it done.
Yeah. And I've certainly went through cycles of moving forward, being stuck, going back, trying again. You've helped me navigate some of that. And yeah, what you say is true. Like you hit a certain point where you're like, okay, well, I think this is it. I'm going to plow forward. And then you hit some other, maybe smaller roadblock. But you can go back and edit and refine the writing. So I want to talk also a little bit before we wrap up, thinking about the publishing side and the decisions that an author has to make. I mean, there's the manuscript, there's the book description, the old cliche of don't judge a book by its cover. There are these really important decisions around a title and cover design. And how do you help people navigate the question of, like, what's the right title, or what's a title that's good enough? What's the right cover design? Because you could agonize over that forever. Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So there's two parts to a book title. There's the main title and there's the subtitle. And what I found to be most helpful is that one of those pieces needs to be compelling, needs to be intriguing, needs to be sexy, if you will. The other part needs to be definitive. It needs to tell the reader what they're getting. Now, you can rearrange those. It doesn't matter which is which. Sometimes authors have a really catchy name for their title, but it doesn't really tell the whole story, but the subtitle does. Yeah. Sometimes the title tells what it is, but the subtitle is sort of what gets you intrigued about reading that. So it has to have both pieces. I also think it has to appeal to your reader. It can't be just something that you like and something that is appealing to you. So using your own judgment isn't always the best way. Yeah. So many of my authors, in working with I'm not a publisher, but in working with a publisher, will do a cover contest. And it's about what readers and potential readers think about the cover. Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. One of my authors, or a couple, wrote a book, and they had this gorgeous picture taken of the two of them. And of course, I know them and love them, and they are dear people. And the picture of the two of them was just great. And so I thought, that is the picture for the cover of the book. But people who didn't know them say, I don't get it. I don't know their story. I don't know what this is about. Yes, they look like lovely people, but would I pick up this book? Probably not. So they went with a cover that was very, very different from the two of them. Now, on the back cover, there is a picture of the two of them, but the front cover is something a little more curious and invites more introspection about what their book is really all about. So I love the notion of having it reader tested. Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways of getting feedback. Surveys. People love voting on LinkedIn polls. If you post photos of some different options, and that actually, every time people vote or comment, that helps a post go viral, which is giving good promotion to the book.
Absolutely. Involving your readers early on in the process, getting them invested and connected.
Yeah. But back to your advice around title and subtitle. I mean, just to share again, sorry to bring it back to my book again. Like I think the mistakes that make us is sort of an intriguing, interesting phrase, and I've gotten pretty good positive feedback on that. But right now, like, the working subtitle is more of that definitive, building a workplace culture of learning and innovation. Like, that's fairly straightforward, as opposed to another phrase. There's another phrase we kicked around that's a fun phrase, something like how getting things wrong can make it right. But then that would be like intriguing as a title, and a subtitle maybe wouldn't work together.
But you can certainly use that copy as you're promoting the book and talking about the book. So remember that you can still keep those words and phrases and use them for many other purposes.
And I've got a file where phrases like that are tucked aside and pulled out of the book. So, the other thing when it comes to publishing is the thinking about the business model. And part of that is setting the price of the book. Now, when I've gone through traditional publishers, my perception has been that they want to set the price too high because they're only making money off the book. Whereas for me, I can accept a lower margin on the book, assuming that means more copies get out there, and that's more exposure then to things like speaking, consulting, training, other entries. So at least for me, that's one of the many compelling reasons to do quote unquote self-publishing. But let me turn it back to you to that question around, book pricing and trying to figure out like what what the sweet spot might be?
Well, I think my advice typically is don't overthink this. If it's a traditional book, people expect to pay about $20 for that book. So why not make it easy on your customer, especially if you're speaking at an event, you want to sell books. Let's make it easy for folks to give you a $20 bill and walk away with their book. So those are some considerations as well. So thinking about how to make it easy for folks as they're buying books, but also how you might make it easy to discount books by having your book self-published, knowing that your cost per book is fairly low. You can offer discounts to organizations who want to bring you in to speak, and they want to get a book for everybody in the crowd, and that's several hundred books. You can afford then to discount it, and everybody wins.
And that, boy, the price per book as a quote unquote self-publisher is, far lower. You're getting them at cost, which, for this upcoming book, I mean, people can go do calculators online to see how much it costs. It probably, $3.50, $4.
Right.
To get a copy. Where if I went through a traditional publisher in the past and they wanted to charge 30 and they would give me a 40% discount, that's 0.6 times 30. Gosh, I'm better at math. 18 bucks.
Don't ask me. Remember, I was the one who opted out of finance.
So my mistake, and I'm not going to edit that out. $18 for an author copy versus $4, or like you said, for bulk sales. That's a huge difference right there.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe final question, Cathy. Again, we're talking with Cathy Fyock, the business book coach. There's that question, and I think people still reach out to me and they frame the question in terms of like, I'm trying to choose a publisher, or I'm trying to get selected by a publisher. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Are you considering yourself in that list of possibilities? I think it's a misnomer to say self-publishing, because I work with many different talented business partners to help bring a book to market. Yes. But let me ask it as kind of a very broad question of your thoughts on somebody trying to navigate maybe the pros and cons of, do I need a publisher? Should I go with a publisher, or can I work with people to do it, quote unquote, myself?
Yes, I'm a big believer in hybrid publishing or self-publishing, whatever you want to call it. But having a fee-for-service model where you pay and then the publisher is sort of out of it. I mean, they don't get any residuals, they don't get any royalties, they don't get any of that. And for most speakers, consultants, coaches, people who are using their book to leverage their expertise in the marketplace, it doesn't make sense for many authors to go traditional publishing, because your hands are tied on so many levels. The cost of the book, your creative input. You have say when it's a hybrid publisher or your own publishing, you have all creative control, total creative control. And sometimes those things can be huge. Also, residual products or workbooks, other materials that come from it. You may have a lot of different ideas about how you can leverage your intellectual property, and it doesn't make sense to have that all tied up, copyright tied up with a publisher. Yeah.
I mean, it seems. And what do you mean by hybrid publishing for people who don't know that term?
Okay, so I always say that publishing a book, saying that you're self-publishing is sort of like saying I'm building my own home.
Sure.
You have lots of different varieties. You can actually, go out and buy the lumber and develop the plans and hammer the nails, and you can do all that. Or you can do some of that. You can hire a subcontractor or have some of that done, or you can hire a contractor who will then have subcontractors And that's still building your own house. So that's very similar to the options that are available to you as an author to have your book published. You can do it all yourself. I don't recommend it for busy professionals when you have to learn all the rules of the road, and you don't want to look like you're self-published or you're homemade. It doesn't look right. So you want to be sure that you're having it done well. So you can hire a lot of subcontractors, or you can hire, in this case, a hybrid publisher who can get all of that done for you. And I like that for my busy professionals, because they can turn it over to one person. They have one point of contact, and it's really a lovely, clean, and productive way for them to move their book forward.
Okay, so that's helpful. Yeah, the difference between, and I've served as my own general contractor.
Yes.
I wonder if I should be, or if that's a mistake. But I think your point is a good one, Cathy, of making sure, because when I've worked with people to do, let's say, interior design of the book, like you said, it's fee for service. I am paying them to do certain work and certain updates, and that's mine. And whether they help me or not, I have the direct connection to Amazon, which is where most books are sold. Payments flow directly to me, as opposed to going through a third party who's taking a cut of each book.
Well, and then the hybrid publisher that I like to work with does not take a cut, which I think is really the right way to work. And for authors who want to establish their thought leadership and speak and train and consult and coach, it really makes more sense to have that publisher out of the way and not taking any monies from the author.
Yeah. And then there's, one other tip that I had gotten, even going back to 2008, going through a publisher. That tip was, make sure the copyright is in your name, not the publisher's name, because the warning I was given was, if the publisher were to go out of business, then you could take the book and get it printed yourself or find another publisher. And, I found the publisher initially proposed copyright in their name. I didn't have to push back very hard, but sometimes you have to know what to ask if you're going that route.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Cathy, thank you for sharing, not just your story and your reflections from your career path, but, a lot of really good tips here about kind of conceptualizing and writing and publishing a book. And I would certainly encourage people to check out Cathy's website, cathyfyock.com, and there'll be a link there in the show notes. And I've got to ask before we wrap up here, I had to cough, and I think I misclicked and actually didn't mute. Did you hear me cough?
No.
A couple minutes ago? Okay. Because I sort of had that moment of like, oh gosh, it's might have been my mistake. I'll go and double check and edit that out and not be coughing in people's ears. But my podcasting mistakes or near mistakes. But again, Cathy Fyock, she's been a really, really great coach and advisor for me through these different projects. And, Cathy, thank you again for working with me, and thank you for being here on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Mark.